It's timely, it's insightful, it's motivating, it's empowering. It's Time with Fred, your inspirational broadcast with host Fred Gaddy.
Hello and welcome to the Time with Fred podcast. This is a podcast that challenges paradigms and mindsets that hold us back. There is a quote by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross that says, and I quote, "The most beautiful people I've known are those who have known trials, who have known struggles, who have known loss, and have found their way out of the depths." And one of those beautiful people happens to be my guest today on the Time with Fred podcast, and she's in the person of Ore Ogungbayi, who joins us from London, England. So a little bit about Ore. Ore is a speaker, trainer, and coach with over 15 years experience in the speaking business. She is the CEO of Ore Training and Development Limited and has delivered public speaking training to over 50,000 young people. Ore is the creator of the Thrive Model, which is a program that addresses confidence, communication, and mental health. And she is the author of Not for Six, Going from Hopeless to Hopeful. And this is a book that's coming out here very shortly. We're going to be hearing a little bit about that. Ore loves sharing her compelling story, which is raw and real and tends to evoke some real strong emotions in the listener, as well as offer hope to anyone who doubts themselves as an individual. Ore, welcome to the Time with Fred podcast today.
Thank you.
So before we get started, let me just ask, who is Ore?
Well, this is me. I mean, with me, what you see is what you get. I am a person who has experienced, how can I put it, some form of trials, but I've learned through them that no matter what we go through in life, if we have people who support us, who champion us, then we can come through. So the Ore that you are speaking to now is the Ore who would love to be the person who champions people through their trials, who gives them hope and shows them that there is always a way forward and that no condition in life is permanent.
And Ore has a very powerful story, like most people do, right? But yours is particularly so because you've gone through stuff that not everyone is able to get through the way you did. So we're gonna go back, take us back a little bit into your into history, right, as I'd like to say it, and share your story a little bit, your upbringing, and how you ended up being where you are today.
Well, my story started a long time ago. It started at the age of 3 months when my African parents came over from Nigeria to study in England. And at the time, they had to work as well as study. And so when they had me, they were not in a position to take care of me in the way that they would have liked. So I had to be fostered. So at the age of 3 months, I moved into the home of strangers. My new parents were white. My father was Scottish. My mother was English. And you may be wondering that, wow, at 3 months, a shock already. But I must say, those are some of the best times of my life. My foster parents loved me. They didn't have children of their own. And they gave me a really good start to my life and told me that whatever I wanted to become in life, I could, and that they would always support me. My joy and my happy life was short-lived with them because when I was 6 years old, I was kidnapped. And at a very early age, I didn't know what was happening to me. I was taken by somebody that I knew. So when the person said they had my mother's permission, because they had a gift for me, I went with them. And I didn't know that I was going on a 2-week run, really. And 2 weeks after the abduction, I found myself in Africa, unprepared, not knowing what was going on, and felt very displaced. I was vulnerable. I didn't know anyone. I didn't understand anything.
Were
And
you
everything
abducted? Were you abducted in England and then sent to Nigeria?
I was taken in
Wow.
England, and my abductor took me, took me to Nigeria, and under the pretense that we were going to Barbados to watch a Michael Jackson concert, and that they had the approval of my mother, who was my English mom, to take me for this special treat, which is why I went. But when I got to Africa, Nigeria, I realized my mother wasn't there waiting for me, because that was the plan, that my mom, my English mom, would be waiting for me. And it was at that point I realized something was wrong. And after a couple of weeks of me throwing tantrums, I was told that she was not my mom, and that the person who had taken me was my mother. Now, I'd been with my foster parents since I was 3 months old. I was now almost 7. I knew nothing else. And yes, you may be wondering that, well, your foster parents were white and you're black. Are you stupid? Or are you blind? But I was neither of those two things. I was just a child who had been loved. And I thought that they were my mom and dad. They told me once that, you get a baby by either going shopping or by ordering one in a catalogue. And that seemed to make sense to me. So now that they were telling me that this individual was my mother, I couldn't believe that that was the case. And I just thought, I'm just going to wait for my mummy and daddy to come and get me, because these people are lying. But my mummy and daddy, they never came. It was the biggest shock of my life up to that point, and I didn't know what to do. It wasn't then helped by the fact that when I decided that, all right, this is the situation I am now in. And by the way, my relatives were shouting at me, yelling at me. I didn't know them at the time, but they were shouting at me to be quiet, stop throwing a tantrum, don't be stupid, this is your new mom. And I hadn't been used to that kind of treatment. Everything was calm in Maidstone, in Kent, where my foster parents had raised me. So I was very scared. And so I decided that, okay, fair enough, I'll stop asking for my mummy and I'll go and play with the kids, the children, and make friends, do what I can until my mummy comes. But unfortunately for me, what I got was rejection. Because I was a chubby child, I think I was cute, to be honest. But, if anyone's ever seen Theodore on the Chipmunks, and if Alvin and the Chipmunks, and Theodore, you will know how cute he is and how you want to cuddle him and give him a kiss. And that's how I was. I was just the cutest thing. But for some reason, my new potential friends thought me fat and ugly and started to call me names like Fatso, Roly Poly, Okotombo, and elephants. And it was my first experience of rejection. And it hurt.
Now, had you made any contact then with your birth parents at that point, or they were still out of the picture when you were in Nigeria?
In fairness to my parents, and this is something that I mentioned in my book, it's quite a big part of my book actually. In fairness to my parents, they were visiting every 2 weeks. So I knew them. That's why I went off with my birth mother, because she said, I'd taken permission from your mom. But I think because they didn't want to confuse me as a child, they let me call my white parents mummy and tried not to confuse me too much with, And so I didn't think that they were my parents. I had never stayed with them ever that I can recall. I'd been with my foster parents for almost 7 years. And so they had been in my life and they cared. This was not a case of neglect. That's not why I was fostered. And, it's a long story of the way things were back then. Lots of African parents put their children in foster care into their custody. And it just so happened that my foster parents fell in love with me. And I think my mom got wind that they intended to keep me. And I think that's why things kicked off. But I was with my mom all through this process, as in my birth mom. She took me to Nigeria. She was with me in Nigeria. I couldn't call her mother, though, because I didn't feel that she was. That took some time. And I now know that she did what she did out of love. But at that point in time, I suffered because I wasn't accepted. There was no space for me in which to speak my pain. The relatives were shouting at me. The children were calling me names. And I grew up into a teenager who resented herself. I self-loathed. I got bigger and bigger as I grew up. And the name calling continued. And by the time I was 14 years old, I hated myself.
How long were you in Nigeria?
I was in Nigeria from the age of, because I turned 7 2 months after I was taken. So I'd say from 7 till 18. So 11 years I was there.
How did you get back to the UK?
When I was 11 years old, my birth father died.
Wow.
And that threw us into some abject poverty. It was a struggle for my mom. My mom was only 31. I was 11, and I had my youngest brother was 5 months old. So we kept on trying to survive. And then by the time I hit 18, my mother just threw in the towel and said, I need to get you kids back to England because you get a better chance there. We'll get more support. Mm-hmm. And so she took me back to England at the age of 18. When I came back to England, I wanted to reconnect with my foster parents, who I thought were my real parents initially. But my birth mother kept on telling me that they no longer lived where we used to live, and that there was no way of me trying to find them. This was back in the 80s. We had no internet. There were no social media platforms on which you could type in a name. And I just felt that there was nothing I could do. We had a program in England called Surprise Surprise that used to be hosted by Cilla Black, and she would reunite people who had been separated for one reason or another. And I had considered going to her show, but my birth mother strongly discouraged it. Mm-hmm. So by then I was very Africanized. You know, as a child in Africa, you do what you're told. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel I had the freedom to act. So when she discouraged it, that was the end of the story. So that was that for a couple of years.
How did you get through those formative years, I'd like to call it, right? You had your first shock of rejection when, the kids were, calling you names and all of that. And then now your father dies, and then now you have to move back. How did you get through those challenging times? Because for a lot of people, that's where life really gets ugly, right? They either just lose it completely, right? Or end up on the wrong tracks and never able to regain, their true selves back, right? What was it that kept you in line, so to speak, and how did you find that motivation and hope through those challenging moments?
There's an incident that happened to me when I was 14 years old, and I'll never forget it. It's a story that I share with young people a lot because it is important that everyone realizes, but especially our young people realize, that we shouldn't allow other people to define us. Mm. By the time I came back to England, I had been defined by other people. The 6-year-old that was taken from Maidstone had changed completely, because when I was taken, I was a bubbly, confident, bouncy, friendly little girl, because my foster parents had created an environment for me to thrive. By the time I came back, I had changed completely. And the defining moment happened when I was 14 years old. And I was invited to my first party. Because when I was a teenager, I was never invited to parties because people my age, they didn't think I was cool enough to come to their parties. And so I was almost like the ugly duckling. I was always sitting on the outside, looking in, wanting to belong and wanting to be cool. But I'd made a friend in Nigeria when I was about 8, and she was lovely. And she grew up to be really, really cool, attractive, popular, and continued to love me still. And she got me through secondary school, because she would introduce me to people and say, this is my sister, this is my sister. And because she was cool, people would sort of like put up with me. So she invited me to her party because she'd moved when she was about 13. And so I went because I thought, oh, this is going to be a cool party because she's so cool. When I got to the party and I got to the door, there were 2 boys standing at the door. Sometimes I tell this story and I can maintain my composure, and sometimes I struggle. It depends on the day. And I walked up to the door very excited about this party. And there were 2 boys at the door who stopped me. I said, excuse me, what do you want? Now my heart started to pound when I heard this, because I was used to bad things happening to me by now. And in my head, I was thinking something bad's going to happen. Something bad's going to happen. In fact, by the time I was 14, I had a catchphrase, which was, why do bad things always happen to me? I just expected that bad things would always happen in my life. So when they said, what do you want? I was like, oh my gosh. And then I said, oh, I'm here for my friend's party. And I told them her name. And they looked me up and down, sort of like assessing me. In their heads, I'm assuming they're thinking, and this is Nigerian lingo, thinking that, who is this house girl that wants to come to our party. I'm assuming that's what they're thinking. And so when they finish looking at me up and down, they say, "Are you sure?" That is the most loaded question I have ever been asked. Are you sure? And I thought, am I sure about what? Am I sure about the fact that I've been invited? Am I sure that I belong here? Am I sure that I'm good enough? All these questions were going through my mind. And I said, breathing, holding my composure. People were watching, by the way, giggling. Nobody intercepted this. They just were having a good time watching me being humiliated. So I said, do you know what? Could you just go upstairs? So I'm now begging in a way. Could you please go upstairs and go and get my friend? And she'll tell you that she invited me. And in my mind, I'm thinking, when my friend comes downstairs, she's going to vindicate me. She's going to give these boys a piece of her mind. So I'm really excited about the fact that all these people laughing are soon going to learn that I'm important to my friend. I mean something. But the boys came back and said to me, sorry, we didn't find her. And they stood like this in the doorway, looked me straight in the eye, so eye contact. And I did the only thing that I knew how, Fred. I turned around and I left. People watched me while I was doing this. It took me 2 hours that day and 3 buses to get home. And I cried all the way home. And by the time I got home, I concluded that, Ore, you are the most useless, worthless person that I know. And that was a defining moment for me, because at that point, I didn't think I'd ever have a family. I didn't think anybody would want me. I didn't think I'd have any children. I thought to myself, do well in your education so you can get a good job and earn good money, and at least you'll get respect through status. So that was my thinking. So when my mum said, you're going back to England, I was like excited. I'm like, yes, I'm going back to England, because in England, people didn't treat me so badly. You know, in Maidstone, I was one of 3 Black kids, and I didn't even know. I mean, of course I could see I was brown, but I didn't, you know, it didn't mean anything. I was at home, I was in my element. So I thought, I want to go back to England. On my return, and now I was in London, I got the same treatment. I couldn't believe it. And the treatment went on for a while. And then one day I sat down, and this is where the new me was born. Or I would say the 6-year-old was reborn, because I was always in there. And I sat down and I thought, Ore, there's one thing that your life has in common now that it did in Nigeria. And that one thing is you. Clearly, people know that you are a victim. You carry yourself like a victim. And so you're an easy target. Yeah. So you're an easy target. So I got that insight, but I thought, so what can I do about it? There was no mental health support of any kind. There was no auntie to come along and say, do you know what, let me take you to a confidence building workshop, or to say, do you know what, let us put you in a drama, in a drama group where you could. I had none of that. So where could I start? And then I thought, I know where I'm going to start. I'm going to make a list. Now, that might sound silly or simple, but I thought, I'm going to make a list. And I made a list of everything that I thought was positive about myself. None of them included looks. Because by the time I came back, I knew I was wrong, but in my head, I thought I knew that I was ugly, fat, and unattractive. That really was my conclusion as far as physically I was concerned.
Because of all the things that you were told.
Exactly, that I'd been told. Because I constantly, I never knew I was fat until they told me. And so I went to the mirror and I kept thinking, but I don't look like I'm fat. And then one day at the age of maybe 12, when my body started to change, I thought, oh my gosh, they're right. And from then on, I relied on the mirror to tell me who I was. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? And my mirror would say to me, it ain't you, mate. It ain't you. So I didn't make a list based on my physical attributes. I made a list based on my qualities as a person. So my skills, my talents, my personality, my attributes. And the list was long. And then I thought, let me make a list of things that I don't think are so great about myself. I'm fat was one, of course. I'm not attractive. I'm not cool. And also I'm a doormat. I let people walk all over me. But when I looked at the list, I thought my bad list was so much shorter than my long list. And I thought, do you know what you can do, Ore? Those things on your bad list that you don't like, you can work on some of those. I mean, just go lose some weight if you're not happy with how you look. I'm not suggesting that we need to lose weight to be confident. That's not what I'm saying. But clearly it bothered me. And it had become a label. And so I thought, and then I thought, okay, I joined Weight Watchers. That was the first time I'd ever heard of Weight Watchers. I'll join Weight Watchers. And before I knew it, 3 months later, I'm looking different. I wasn't thinking, Ore, you're attractive. Do you know what I was thinking? I was thinking, Ore, you can do anything. That's what I was thinking.
Did anyone take you through that exercise? Because for a lot of folks who get into that, stage of life where they're, starting to question some of these negative thoughts, right? And then, start writing. Because I had a guest on the show one time who actually went through that exercise, right? Had his son write on all those positive things compared to the negative things and realized those negative things paled in comparison to all that. Did someone take you through how did you discover that ability to do that?
There were a couple of things that may have, I don't know, because it was just a thought that came to me, but clearly thoughts don't come from nowhere. They come from somewhere.
Perhaps a book you read, someone you came into contact with or something.
Yeah, it has to be from something. And then, because I've had to write my book, of course, and I've had to think, because some of these things are in the book, and I anticipate that people think, well, yeah, okay, oh, well and good, you made a list. But then I realized that one of the reasons that I was able to have the ability and the capacity to do so is because the 6-year-old was still in me, for one. My father, my Scottish father, had told me that, Ore, you can do whatever you want. He had always told me that I was a princess. I had quite a lot of skills. But for a 6-year-old, by the time I got to Nigeria, I was very outspoken. My head mistress, because we had to go back to my primary school when my mother needed to reinstate her stay after fleeing the country. So she said, Ore, she's the brightest child I've ever taught to date. So I think that intelligence, plus I'd now heard my mother's side of the story. And I realized that all this happened to me because 2 women loved me. Not 2 women, but 2 sets of parents loved me and wanted me so badly. And I sat down and I allowed that to land with me. And I thought, if they love me, there's some good somewhere. So let me make a list. So that's how that came about. Now, I know not everyone will be that fortunate. I know that, which is why I thought, okay, Ore, you can make your own contribution, because those 6 years of formative years for me clearly made a difference. And every child deserves that. And that is why I'm so passionate that, if I can get my hands on every child possible in the world, I want to tell them who they potentially are.
This is a very powerful concept here. My guest last week shared a similar story about when he was in high school. He had a stuttering problem. He was an immigrant. He had to come, I think he had moved from Uganda to Canada, and of course he had an accent, but then he had a stuttering problem as well. And then one time the teacher of the class asked him to share his story, and then when he started talking, of course he started stuttering, and the kids, the mean kids who were in the classroom, told him to go back to where he came from, and that shattered his self-confidence. That when he got to 10th grade, he dropped out of school. And so he talked about how powerful some of those negative words are, right? Whether they're from a friend or a parent, and the impact that it can have. And then fast forward a few years, he got into another group of people who used positive words to describe him, and that helped him break or overcome that stuttering problem that he had. So I see this as a double-edged sword, right? The negative words, and in your case, when you left England, you were, that confident, young 6-year-old, and then when you got to Nigeria, those negative words kind of broke you. Would you agree with that statement that the words that we speak have impact on the lives of other people?
I agree. I totally agree. I totally agree. And that is why, I mean, I go into schools a lot and I work with them on their presenting skills, public speaking. But when I'm training them, I always say to them that the best speakers are those who care about how others feel, because then you will choose your words carefully. You'll never want to hurt somebody's feelings. You'll never want to cause offense, or incite a riot. You will say words that edify, that uplift, that educate and inspire. Words are very, very powerful. Very, very, very powerful.
Wow.
We need to choose them carefully.
Couldn't agree more. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Time with Fred, an inspirational radio broadcast with your host, speaker, and life coach, Fred Gaddy.
Thank you again for joining us. I'm speaking today with Ore Ogungbayi, joining us all the way from London, England, sharing her story about how she was able to overcome some of the challenges in life. So, Ore, you started this coaching program or this coaching business where you're now speaking into the life of kids, right? I mean, you found yourself and you're doing what you love the most. And then another tragedy happened at some point when you lost your husband.
Yeah, in 2016, very sudden. It was really suddenly. My husband used to cycle to work. He was very fit. He was a triathlete. He was a marathon runner. Even though we lived in England, he'd done the San Francisco run. He'd done another one in America. He did two, and he did a few in England as well. So he was very fit. And then one day he came home and said, I'm struggling to breathe. We went to the hospital. They found cancer cells, and that was really the beginning of this journey. 10 months later, he was dead.
Wow. What did that do to you? I mean, you lost your dad at a very young age, and then now, your husband. How old was he when he died?
He just turned 50.
Wow. What did that do to you? Your mindset and everything else, right? You're the one now inspiring people, and now you have to deal with another tragedy.
What it's done to me, I want to be careful what I say because I don't want it to be misunderstood. Tunde's death was the worst thing that ever happened to me. But Tunde's death was also the best thing that ever happened to me.
Why do you say that?
Because now I know who I really am. See, I say to people that you never know who someone really is until they either become wealthy or their back is pushed up against a wall. So they're challenged. You never know who people are. And it's when we have difficulties or challenges or hardship that our true nature is exposed. And Tunde's passing away exposed my true nature. And I have to say that I was really pleased to meet me.
That's a very powerful statement. It's a very powerful, and I understand exactly what you're talking about. And I think it goes back to that beginning quote and again. And I think it's really worth repeating. And it says, "The most beautiful people I have known are those who have known trials, who have known struggles, and who have known loss, but they found their way out of the depths." Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes, yes, for sure. For sure. I wish I could give everyone who's suffered loss or are grieving just a hug. I know that we all grieve in different ways, and I respect that. I appreciate that. And I'm not going to say that the way I grieved was the perfect way to grieve, because I decided I was going to be strong about this because of my daughters. I didn't want them to be afraid that things would fall apart because they'd lost their dad. And so I thought I would be very strong. But in my taking that stance, they had no opportunity to speak about how they were really feeling because I wasn't showing or speaking about how I was feeling. And so they were tackling things and dealing with things internally, which then manifested itself in panic attacks with my young one and then depression with my older one. So there's learning in there. there's learning in there, and things have changed. Things have changed. They can now come up to me and say, "Mummy, I'm not feeling so. I don't think I'm feeling so great with my mental well-being. I think I'll make an appointment to see my GP or my doctor just to stay on the safe side." And they will openly come and tell me that. Whereas before, everyone was just being this strong person because we didn't want to talk about the elephant in the room. We were not going to upset anyone because it looks like mum is having a good day, so I'm not going to tell her that I'm feeling sad that my daddy's dead or something like that. Whereas now, things are a lot more relaxed. So I'm still strong, but I show my feelings a lot more. And if I'm struggling with things now, I don't protect my daughters from it anymore. Protecting them was never the answer. Speaking my truth was the answer. And now I do.
I think this goes back, Ore, to the conversation we're having the other day about vulnerabilities, right? And this is where men in particular are notorious because we tend to, because of the way society views the male figure, right? Men are tough, men don't cry, you don't be a sissy. And so men go through life and they tend to suppress those emotions because if I cry, my friends are going to make a mockery of me or they're going to call me names. And so even though I'm hurting, I'm going to suck it up, as the saying goes, right? And not share it because I can't afford to be vulnerable. And so we tend to bottle, these feelings and these emotions until it gets to a point where we can't take it anymore. And then it starts manifesting, to your point, itself in very ugly ways. How important is it, right? From not even from a male's perspective, but just from a human perspective, to say it's okay that I'm hurting. It's okay that I'm going through this, right? And not mask these feelings and pretend that everything is okay when it's not. Because this is a problem that I've seen occur in so many different settings, right? We don't want other people to let in, right? We don't want to let be, and I get that we have to, be mindful of who we let into our lives. I respect that, but when we're hurting and we can benefit from the counseling of someone or maybe the listening ear of someone, um, why is it such a big deal?
Oh gosh, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is. Don't keep it together. Don't be a man. Be a human being. Cry. Cry
Yeah,
if you want
yeah,
to.
yeah.
Cry if you want to.
And so all these experiences help shape what you do now, right? Your mission, your
Oh
training,
gosh.
your coaching, and you do a little bit of mental health as well. And you have a book coming out, Not for
Yeah.
Six. Can you tell us about that book?
Well, Not for Six is a book that I should have written years ago, but I think the timing is perfect now. And Not for Six was meant to be a bit more detail about what happened to me between the age of 3 months old to 18. Yeah, so that's what it was meant to be. But I wanted the book to be useful. I wanted it to add value and I wanted it to make impact. And so Not for Six is a combination of my story, which makes up 70% of the book, and the rest of it is the breakdown of my Thrive model, which is a program I created for young people to help them thrive and excel in life through developing their confidence, enhancing their communication skills, and managing their mental health. And so in the book are tips in there, but it's written in a way where the toolkit in the book, you could literally just pick it up and it feels like either a workbook or a handout where you could just have a look at the quick tips and think, I'm going for an interview today. Let me have a look at Auntie Ore's book and see what she suggests I do. Make eye contact, project my voice, don't be nervous. Or, I'm feeling a bit stressed. Oh, let me have a look at Auntie Ore's book and see what she wrote about, managing my stress levels, being emotionally resilient. And so I want it to be a go-to book in a simple way, because it's quite simple, the book, but also be a powerful way of getting a story across to say that we all have stuff that happens to us.
Yeah.
People have had it worse than me.
Yeah.
Some haven't. We all have our stories to tell.
Wow.
But our stories can either make us or break us. It's our choice. But
Wow.
of course, sometimes we need a little bit of help.
Wow. What a powerful and positive outlook already that you have. One of the questions that I ask a lot of my guests on the podcast is what defines them. I mean, you hear some of these stories and you wonder, how do they keep going, right? And I want to ask you that question as we kind of start winding down here, what defines you? What keeps you going in spite of all that you've been through in life?
The truth about, I mean, I am a Christian, so I do believe in God.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that everybody does and everybody should, but I do believe in
It's your
God.
personal
And
faith. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
and within that belief is this understanding that my life is a journey.
Mm.
It is a journey for me to become the best version of myself that is available. And I'm not anywhere near there yet. And life is a roller coaster. It's about ups and downs, twists and turns. And I look around the world and I see people who are so much worse off than I am. The children in Yemen, I just want to weep. So I see people, and I think to myself, I've been given this gift of life. Shouldn't I just live it? I've only got 2 quotes that I ever made up in my whole life. So in this podcast, I'm going to share them both.
Please
I'll
do.
share the one that's relevant now, and then I'll just share the other one just for the fun of it. And so at the end of this book, I write 12 lessons that I've learned. And my younger daughter said that's her favorite part of the book. So 12 lessons that I've learned. And at the end of that, this is my new quote. Yeah, so you can quote me and attribute it to my name.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, say Auntie Ore says this, because that's what the young people call me. They call me Auntie. So this is what I say. We are not just on this journey of living to survive. We are on this journey of living to thrive.
I think you need to say that again. It's so powerful.
We are not on this journey of living to survive. We are on this journey of living to thrive.
Mm.
And
How
that's what I
true,
want.
how powerful.
Yeah, that's what I want for everyone, especially our young people. It is so important. And the other, I have to share the other quote with you. It's not relevant, but it's something that I use when I'm training in public speaking, because young people they're just so amazing. I love them. And, they're the group within our communities where when you contribute to them, you know that they appreciate it. You can tell. They come and say thank you. You can see the change in them. So I love working with them. So when we're talking about how do we structure a speech, okay, you want to give let's say you want to give a 3 to 5 minute speech. How can you organize your speech? I always liken structuring a speech to a 3-course meal. And so this is a quote they know me for. I say to them, food is to the body what words are to the mind.
Mm.
So those are my 2 quotes in this life. So I thought I'd just share them.
Very, very, very powerful. Yeah, food is to the body what words are to the mind, and we all just witnessed or heard, your powerful story and the impact that words had on you. Or there's someone probably listening to this podcast and maybe going through some really challenging times, whether it's maybe a loss of a loved one, a loss of a job, maybe a COVID-related impact, or whatever. What would you say to that person right now?
What I would say, and I cannot go into the different things that I have experienced to date, including loss of income, loss of an investment, loss of my home, different things I've been through. When they say there's always light at the end of the tunnel, it is so, so true. And all I will say to that individual is just keep on putting one foot in front of the other. Keep on going. If that entails holding somebody else's hand, that's what you do. If it means that you need to stop for a while and take a break and take a breath and cry, do that. But it is so important that each of us choose to have hope, because moving forward is a choice.
Mm.
It really is. And every human being, unless they are locked behind a prison wall, and at some point they will be released, but unless you're being held captive, you have the choice to have hope. And with hope, things start to happen. And when things start to happen, things change. My life has shown me that no situation could be so desperate as for me to give up and give in. I have to pick myself up and keep moving forward. And I have to tell you where my journey is taking me so far, because I'm not at my destination yet, but the path that my journey is leading into, I am so, so happy that I chose to have hope. And that's what I would like to share with anyone who may be listening.
Wow. And so I know you're a trainer. I know you speak, you train young people especially, and you probably were doing this in person, and then now we have COVID. Are you doing these virtually as well? You know, perhaps there's someone watching or listening in the United States or Canada, wherever, and may want you to come speak to their kids or school. Or are you doing this virtually now?
I am doing it virtually. I am doing it virtually.
And how do they get a hold of you?
I'm here for any young person who needs me. My website is www.ore-lu.com. And I'm happy to spell that for you.
Yes, please.
So it's www.ore-lou.com. And please check out my mental health page. It's my favorite page on my website.
Or as we wrap this up, I mean, this has been such a powerful experience, and you know, every now and then you hear stories that just uplifts you, that just lets you know that wow, if Ore could do this, if Ore was able to go through, you know, this challenging experiences that she had, you know, that gives me a little bit of hope, and that's what this podcast is about, right? Perhaps you're listening or you're watching, and you're in the deep of things. You're going through the valley of the shadow of death, so to speak, and wondering, how am I ever going to be able to get out of this? You can, if Ore, based on what she shared, was able to get through this. It gives me hope, and I hope that it gives you hope that you can too. And before we end, I want to quote her, and this is a powerful quote that she gave us a short while ago. She says, "We're not on this journey of living to survive. We are on this journey to thrive." And this is original and exclusive to Ore Ogungbayi. I didn't make this out. You heard her say that. But or any final thoughts as we wrap this up?
Yes, I would just like to say that if anyone is struggling, please ask for support. No man is an island. And there have been times, because I don't want to come across as if I fixed this myself. I have had a lot of support and help, but I've also chosen to ask for the support or accept a helping hand. And pride always comes before a fall. So I would say, if you're struggling, find someone, talk to them, because a problem shared is a problem halved.
Couldn't have said this any better. Ore, thank you so much for coming on the Time with Fred podcast and just opening up, sharing your story with us, and sharing those tips and lessons. And thank you for what you're doing. I mean, you didn't let this define you. You're paying it forward by sewing into other kids and inspiring the world with your story. I do wish you well, and hopefully we get to connect again at some point. And to you, our audience, for tuning into this edition of Time with Fred. And until next time, stay well.